It started on a Wednesday, just before noon, the kind of gray ski day that doesn't quite rain but manages to feel soaked anyway. I was driving back from a meeting with investors. They were cautious but interested. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. And in this stage of building something from the dirt, that's a win. I pulled into our driveway with a head full of next steps and a half-cold coffee in the cup holder. Her car was already there. She wasn't supposed to be home. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. Not the comforting kind of quiet, the suspicious kind. You know it when you hear it, like the walls are holding their breath. I set my keys down and heard the soft murmur of a voice. Hers, from upstairs. Not a phone call voice. A lower register. Intimate. Measured. Almost like reading a poem. Then a laugh. Short. Caught. Like she knew it shouldn't have escaped. I didn't move for a solid minute. Not out of fear. Not even anger. Just something else entirely. Like my body hadn't caught up to my brain yet. I went upstairs. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. The bedroom door was slightly open. Just enough to see her sitting cross-legged on the bed. Facing her laptop. Wearing one of those oversized hoodies that weren't mine. She didn't see me. She was too focused on the screen. Her face was lit with this look I hadn't seen in years. Not even at our wedding. Not even when we got the house. Not even when I got promoted and flew her to Santorini just because. No, this look was reserved for someone else entirely. It was full. Undisguised. Free. I stepped back before she saw me. Quietly. Back down the hallway, down the stairs, out the door. Sat in my car and just stared at the steering wheel for 20 straight minutes. That night I said nothing. I cooked dinner. She barely touched it. I asked if something was wrong. She said no. She asked me how the investor meeting went, but not in a way that meant she cared. It was just a placeholder. Just noise. She was already mentally somewhere else, possibly with someone else, and I was becoming background static. But it wasn't real yet. Not until the next day. I came home from a follow-up pitch meeting, high on the rush of momentum. I was early. She wasn't expecting me. I walked into the kitchen and saw her phone face up on the counter. Screen lit. A notification banner. One message. From someone saved only as T. I didn't mean to read it. I really didn't. I just saw my name. It said, "He's got nothing. Not even a clue. You're safe." She walked in a few seconds later and froze the instant she saw me standing there. She glanced at the phone, then at me, and for the briefest flicker of a second, she smiled. Not a smile of guilt. A smile of certainty. Like I was exactly where she wanted me. In the middle of not knowing what was real. "I told you," she said, walking past me to the fridge. "You'll never make it. Not with them. Not with anything. You're all potential, no execution." It hit me so hard I physically stepped back. I looked at her like I'd never seen her before because in that moment I hadn't. This wasn't the woman I met 6 years ago. This wasn't even someone pretending. This was someone who had taken off a mask and underneath was pure calculation. I didn't speak. I just walked out. Drove. Nowhere in particular. I just needed space. I didn't want to blow up or accuse or cry. I wanted answers, but not the kind you ask for. The kind you dig for. The kind you earn. And I was about to dig deep. I didn't go far that night. Parked 3 blocks away in a grocery store lot and just sat there in the dark, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. I wasn't spinning. I wasn't panicking. I was calculating. Every memory, every offhand comment, every girl's trip that didn't include a single tagged photo. I wasn't grieving. Not yet. I was preparing for war. The next morning I left before she woke up. No note, no message. She didn't call. I doubt she even noticed. I spent the day making moves, not emotional ones, tactical ones. I knew a guy, former coworker, tech-savvy, now in cybersecurity. I bought him lunch and asked him, point blank, if he could recover deleted messages from a synced cloud account. He didn't ask why. Just nodded, took a sip of his drink, and said, "Give me 48 hours. That night, I slept in the guest room. She didn't ask why. I think, in her mind, she'd already checked out. Maybe she thought I'd finally picked up on her disinterest and was giving her the space to drift further. Maybe she thought I'd crumble quietly. What she didn't know was that while she was slipping away, I was building the timeline. 2 days later, I had the messages. Hundreds of them. She hadn't even been careful. There were photos, videos, voice notes, and the texts, long, cruel paragraphs dragging me through the mud with him like I was some pathetic extra in their private show. I read every word. I wanted to feel every bruise. I wanted the truth raw. No sugar. No buffers. He wasn't just some guy. He was a client. A married one. Older. Wealthy. Arrogant. The kind of man who collects people like watches. Keeps them pristine until he gets bored. Their conversations weren't just romantic. They were strategic. She wanted out of our marriage, but not empty-handed. She wanted him to help her bury me in court when she filed. She had a whole plan, but that's not what cut deepest. It was the way she talked about me. Not with hatred, not with anger, with disgust. Like I was some sad, unfinished project she regretted ever starting. Like I was a weight. Like my dreams were an inconvenience. A joke. That night I didn't confront her. I thanked her. I waited until she was brushing her hair in the bathroom. She stood there in silence, face blank, watching herself. I leaned against the doorframe and said, calm as still water, "Thank you." She turned slowly. "For what?" "For confirming everything I suspected," I said. I couldn't have asked for a clearer confession. She narrowed her eyes, confused then amused. "You're going to play detective now? Please. You wouldn't even know where to start." "Started 2 days ago," I said. "You've been surprisingly generous with the evidence." There was a flicker then. Something small. A crack in her expression. But it closed fast. She stepped forward, close enough to smell the perfume she only wore on dates I wasn't invited to. "You're bluffing," she said, voice low. "You always bluff?" I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. Her voice played back, recorded from one of the voicemails to him. "He still thinks the startup is going to save him. Let him crash. I'll clean up the mess once the paperwork's done." She went pale, but only for a second. Then she did something I didn't expect. She laughed. Not fake. Not forced. Real, rich laughter. Like this was a game and I'd just lost a turn. "You really think this changes anything?" she said, smirking. "You have nothing. He has lawyers. I have a plan. All you've got is a bruised ego." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Because signing day, the day the deal closed and my company went from hopeful to funded, was tomorrow. And she had no idea the man she thought had nothing was about to flip the entire script. She went to bed smug that night, thinking she'd pinned me under her heel. I stayed up in the guest room, laptop open, phone pinging every few minutes. Final logistics. Legal documents. Confirmation emails. Tomorrow was signing day. The investors had greenlit the full round. 7 figures. My app, my platform, my pitch finally real. No more dreams scribbled on napkins. It was happening. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because I needed her to see it. See me win. See me rise right in front of her after she'd made me out to be a joke in her private little theater. This wasn't about revenge. This was about exposure. I wanted her facade to burn under the truth. Morning came. She was already dressed, heels on, coffee in hand, phone pressed to her ear. Coordinating something. Probably brunch with him or a cover story for his wife. She didn't even look at me when I walked in. "You're wearing that?" she muttered without glancing up. I was. Same hoodie I wore the night I caught her lying, the one she said made me look like a kid playing entrepreneur. I zipped it halfway, smiled to myself, and walked past her out the door. By noon, I was standing in a downtown office surrounded by people who had just written checks big enough to flip my entire financial reality. My lawyer handed me the final contract. I signed. It was done. Just like that. Years of work sealed in 2 signatures. The high didn't hit right away. It rolled in slowly, not adrenaline, but clarity. I was no longer tied to her world. I didn't need her approval. Didn't need her at all. I left the office and didn't go home. I went to a friend's place. Left my phone charging while I stood out on the balcony overlooking the city, watching the sun drop behind the skyline like it was making room for something new. When I finally picked up my phone, there were 5 missed calls. All from her. No texts. Just calls. I waited. At 6:47 p.m. she finally sent one message. Why didn't you tell me it was today? I stared at the screen for a long time. No punctuation. No congratulations. No apology. Just a question layered with something she never used to show me any more fear. I replied with one line, you said I'd never make it. She read it instantly. No response. 10 minutes passed. Then the doorbell rang. I didn't need to look. I knew she'd come. She was standing on the porch, hair perfect, dressed too expensive for a Wednesday, face tight like she couldn't decide if she was angry or nervous. Maybe both. You should have told me, she said, stepping in like she still had a right. I didn't think you'd care, I replied, leaning back against the table. You didn't think I'd care? She repeated, laughing dryly. After everything we've built, I cut in. We didn't build anything. I built. You bet against it. She crossed her arms, the way she always did when she was about to lie. You're being dramatic. No. I'm being accurate. Silence. Then her eyes narrowed. You read the messages. There it was. Not denial. Not confusion. Just confirmation wrapped in defiance. I did, I said. All of them. T's quite the poet. She looked away, jaw clenched. You don't understand, I understand perfectly, I said, stepping closer. You picked a side. You played your game. You laughed with him about how clueless I was. You planned your exit. And you lost your timing. She tried to speak. I raised a hand. You said I had nothing. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't mean, but he did, I said. And you believed him. That's the part that stings. She shook her head like she was resetting the scene. Look, we can talk about this. Just let me explain. Okay? I looked at her and, for the first time in months, saw her clearly. Not the curated version. Not the woman I fell in love with. The one who lied with style, who smiled while planning my downfall. Explain it to him, I said, stepping aside and opening the door. We're done. She didn't move. Not at first. Then slowly, she walked out. Not a word. No fight. Just the sound of her heels fading down the porch. And as the door clicked shut behind her, for the first time in what felt like forever, the house finally sounded honest. 2 days after she walked out, she came back. Not with apologies. Not with tears. She came back with a plan. She let herself in while I was in a meeting. The key I hadn't yet changed. Mistake number 1. When I came downstairs, she was already sitting at the dining table, legs crossed, folder in front of her like this was a business negotiation. No hello. No, can we talk? Just silence, weaponized. I stood there, still holding my coffee, watching her like she was a stranger who wandered into my life by accident. But no, she wasn't lost. She knew exactly where she was and why. You need to be reasonable, she said, finally tapping the folder. We can make this easy. Easy. I didn't sit. Just stared at the folder, then back at her. This isn't going to work like that, I said. You don't get to play the lawyer now. You burned the house down and came back asking for furniture. She tilted her head, pretending to be amused. It's not personal. It's just clean. I know your company's about to blow up. I'm just asking for what I'm entitled to. My mouth went dry with a laugh I couldn't hold in. Entitled? You don't think I helped you build this? She said, voice sharper now. I stood by you through every dead-end job, every idea that flopped. I deserve a piece of what comes next. I stepped closer, lowering my voice to match the cold steel in hers. You weren't standing by me. You were shopping for an exit. Every late night you worked late. Every weekend you disappeared. You weren't investing in me. You were placing bets elsewhere. You bet against me. She didn't flinch. It was insurance. That word hit harder than the rest. Insurance. Like our marriage was a risk she'd taken out a policy on in case I failed. And now that I hadn't, she wanted her payout. I picked up the folder, scanned it. It was neatly organized. Bullet points, asset division, property claims. A full breakdown of what she thought she'd walk away with. Not once had she asked if we could fix anything. Not once had she even acknowledged what she'd done to me emotionally. She came for money, not closure. You know this won't hold, I said, setting it back down. Everything you want depends on one lie, that we were still a real couple. We were, she snapped. On paper. And off paper? I asked. She looked away. And in that second, her entire posture changed. The confidence cracked. Just a little. Just enough for the truth to peek out. I was scared, she said quietly. You were chasing a dream that looked like a dead end. I thought, maybe he could give me something more stable. I should have been angry. Should have thrown the folder, shouted, demanded to know why years of loyalty had meant so little. But I didn't. Because that line, something more stable, said it all. She didn't want love. She wanted a guarantee. And when she thought I couldn't give her that, she looked for someone who could. That was your mistake, I said. Not that you gave up on me. That you thought I needed you to win. She stood then, picked up the folder and her purse. Her expression shifted again, not regret, not shame, something else. A calculation unfinished. I'll let the lawyers handle it, she said as she walked toward the door. She stopped just before leaving. You got lucky, she said, not turning around. Don't let it get to your head. I watched her walk out again. This time I locked the door behind her. I didn't get lucky. I got free. It didn't take long for the mask to fall completely. 3 days after her last visit, I got a message from a blocked number. Just a photo. No text. It was her sitting on a hotel bed, legs tucked beneath her, wine glass in hand. Same hoodie she'd worn the night I caught her laughing at my ambition. But this time it wasn't casual. This time it was bait. I didn't reply. Didn't even let myself feel anything. I just stared at the image until the corners blurred, not with emotion, with indifference. She was trying to reel me back in. The paperwork she brought didn't land, so now she was pivoting. Playing the memory card. She thought the nostalgia might give her a second chance at influence. What she didn't know was that I'd already moved my shares into a private trust. One she couldn't touch. My lawyer had watched the message come in. I'd given him full access. Every move she made now, every breadcrumb she dropped, was being cataloged. And then came the moment I didn't see coming. Her lover, Troy, emailed me directly. No hello. No threats. Just a short, smug paragraph. She was never yours. You were just keeping her busy. That was it. I don't know what I expected from him. Maybe more subtlety. Maybe more shame. But no, he wanted me to know. Wanted to poke the wound and see if I'd bleed. But I didn't reply. Instead, I sent the message straight to my lawyer, who smiled wider than I'd seen him smile since our first meeting. Excellent, he said. He just gave us motive, tone, and timeline. They're imploding, and they're doing it in writing. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. By the following week, she was officially out of the house. I boxed up her things, what little was actually hers, and left them in a storage unit downtown with a code and an expiration date. She didn't even respond when I sent her the details. Maybe she thought silence was power. Maybe she thought her absence would sting more than her presence. But then, in a final twist, she made her real move. She didn't come for the money. She came for my reputation. One morning, I woke up to a firestorm. Emails, texts, DMs, all with the same link. A post she'd made on a shared forum disguised under a fake name claiming I'd emotionally manipulated her, used her, and then abandoned her after my business took off. She even included screenshots, carefully cropped, wildly out of context, painting her as the supportive wife who was discarded the moment success arrived. It was calculated. It was brutal. It was public. And it backfired. Because what she didn't realize was that while she'd been constructing her narrative, I'd quietly built mine, with receipts, logs, timelines, and the full story ready to be released if needed. It took less than 24 hours for the truth to spread. People compared the dates, saw the full messages. Her fake profile was exposed. Her story crumbled. She deleted everything, but it was too late. Screenshots live forever. That night, she called me. For the first time in weeks. She didn't yell. She didn't beg. She asked one question, "Why are you doing this?" I paused, then answered calmly, "I'm not." "You are." She hung up. And that was the last time I ever heard her voice. The peace didn't last long. It never does when someone like her is cornered, not by law, not by scandal, but by irrelevance. She wasn't built to fade quietly. So when the story she tried to spin fell apart, she did what manipulators do best, shifted the spotlight. This time, she didn't come at me directly. She went after people around me. My assistant got a message from a burner account accusing her of sleeping her way into her job. A childhood friend of mine, a silent investor, was hit with a fake harassment complaint. My inbox filled with requests for clarification from bloggers I'd never heard of, all suspiciously interested in the same fabricated timeline. She was planting rot in the foundation, hoping anything would stick. But again, she underestimated me. Every person close to me had already been briefed. Not just about her, but about what to expect. This wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. I'd learned quickly, anyone who smiles in the dark has already chosen their battlefield. But she wasn't just playing defense. She was unraveling. Through one of those odd digital breadcrumbs, a friend of a friend who followed her burner and screenshotted everything, I learned she'd lost Troy. Not in a dramatic breakup. In silence. He ghosted her once the pressure started. The man who had filled her head with promises and laughed behind my back walked away the second things got inconvenient. And she couldn't stand it. That's when she did the unthinkable. She came to my office. No appointment. No warning. Just walked into the lobby with sunglasses, a sharp coat, and a look that said she still believed she belonged. My receptionist didn't even recognize her, just a woman asking for you by first name. I stepped into the hallway just as the elevator opened. She was standing there like she expected a red carpet. "You're not supposed to be here," I said, voice flat. "I need 5 minutes," she said. Privately. "You've had 5 years," I replied. "You used them poorly." There was a long silence. She glanced around the hallway, then lowered her voice. "I lost everything." I didn't respond. "I was wrong," she said, and this time her voice cracked. "Okay? I was wrong. I thought he'd be different. I thought I was protecting myself. But he vanished. And now everyone thinks they think you're exactly who you showed them," I said. "You just didn't expect them to believe it." Her eyes welled, but no tears fell. She was still in costume. She wasn't there for forgiveness. She was there for control. "You built all of this off my back," she said quietly. "You took my stability and turned it into your success. And now I have nothing." I stared at her for a long time. Not with hate. Not even with anger. Just with the clarity that comes when someone finally exposes their true fear, not being hated, but being forgettable. "You never supported me," I said. "You tolerated me. You mocked me when I struggled, and you resented me when I didn't. That's not partnership. That's proximity." She stepped forward, tone low and bitter. "You think this is over? It's not over. You think people care about your side now, they won't when this dies down. They'll forget you too." I smiled just a little. "I hope they do," I said. "Because I didn't build this to be remembered. I built it to be free." Security came before she could say anything else. I didn't watch her leave. I turned back toward the glass wall of my office, sunlight pouring in, emails stacking up, meetings waiting, all things she'd once told me I'd never handle on my own. She was wrong. And now she was gone. But the final act was still coming. Because there was one last move she hadn't played yet. And I was already waiting for it. 3 weeks passed. 3 long, strangely quiet weeks. No calls. No messages. No sudden appearances at my door or office. The digital storm she had tried to brew fizzled out. Her burner accounts went cold. Her name, once buzzing around like a loose wire, stopped showing up altogether. She vanished like smoke, as if the game had ended and she had finally folded. But that's the thing about people like her, they don't disappear. They recalculate. And when she finally resurfaced, it wasn't loud. It was subtle. Dangerously subtle. It started with a conversation I overheard at a gallery event. A woman I barely knew, distant connection through one of the newer investors, was talking about some ex-wife who's been quietly reaching out to press. I didn't react, just listened. "She's been sending voice memos," the woman said. "Long ones, crying. Says he used her, then left her the minute he got rich. Wants to reclaim the narrative. It's all very dramatic." That was her play. If she couldn't break me, she'd rewrite herself as the tragic figure. Not the vengeful ex, not the manipulator, but the woman who loved too much and got left behind. It was genius in its own sick way, not a direct attack, but a slow leak. Emotional, performative, carefully engineered to test the boundaries of sympathy. And it might have worked. It should have worked. But the mistake she made this time was picking the wrong audience. One of those journalists, a small-time podcaster who almost took the bait, reached out to me. Said they always offer the right of reply. Attached to the email was a sample of her audio. I wasn't sure why I pressed play. But I did. And what I heard wasn't just performance, it was precision. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She confessed slowly, like a woman reciting poetry to herself in a mirror. She admitted to cheating, but only after feeling emotionally abandoned. She described me not as cruel, but empty. Said I drifted too far into ambition, that I stopped being human and became a brand. She framed her betrayal as a byproduct of my success. And the worst part? She sounded believable. For anyone who hadn't seen the real messages, the timelines, the games, they'd buy it. Easily. She didn't just want to poison my reputation. She wanted to own it. She wanted the pain she caused to be buried beneath the illusion that she was the one who suffered most. I didn't respond to the email. I didn't need to. Instead, I called one of the newer investors. A quiet, highly connected woman named Lena. She'd seen people like my ex before. She'd warned me, early on, that ghosts don't vanish. They circle back, dressed in softer clothes. I told her everything, the full truth. Gave her access to the archive my lawyer had compiled, unfiltered, unedited. I expected sympathy. I got something better. I want her to speak, Lena said coolly. Let her keep talking. Let her go public. Then we drown her in receipts. It was ruthless, and exactly what was needed. Within a week, the podcast went live. My ex-wife's voice, gentle and bruised, shared to thousands. The episode titled, "The One Who Got Away with It." Clever spin, I'll give her that. The response was instant. Listeners took sides. Some defended her. Others questioned the holes. But one comment kept popping up. Where's his version? I gave it to them. One interview. One long, calm, unsensational recording, just the truth, backed with dates, audio, screenshots, everything. Not angry. Not vindictive. Just surgical. And it worked. Her narrative didn't just collapse. It backfired. People saw the contrast. Her tears, carefully timed, now rang hollow. Her honesty looked like theater. The same audience she tried to enchant now turned on her, not out of loyalty to me, but out of betrayal from her. No one hates a liar more than the people they almost convinced. She disappeared again. For real this time. But the damage she tried to cause? It became the proof of everything I needed to rise without her shadow behind me. And just when I thought it was over, really over, I got a letter. Not from her. From his wife. It arrived in a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten letter. Neat, controlled penmanship. Thick paper, no scent, no flair. Just deliberate, quiet elegance. Whoever sent it wanted me to take it seriously. I read it 3 times before I believed it. It was from her. Not my ex. His wife. The man my ex had betrayed me with. The same man who ghosted her the minute things got hard. The one who told her I had nothing. His own wife had somehow found me. The letter was brief, but every word sliced clean. I know who you are. I know what she did. I also know what he did and for how long. You don't owe me anything. But if you're willing to talk, I think it's time someone else knew the truth too. Not for revenge. For clarity. No signature. Just a phone number. I didn't call right away. I wasn't sure if this was another trick. Another twist in a drama that should have ended months ago. But something about the tone. It didn't read like vengeance. It read like resolve. Like a woman who, just like me, had spent too long pretending not to see what was right in front of her. I called 2 days later. Her voice was calm. Older than I expected, but not weak. She didn't apologize. She didn't fumble. I'm not here to compare wounds, she said, but I think we've both been fed the same poison. From different bottles. We met at a cafe downtown. Neutral territory. She wore a beige coat, no makeup, hair tied back. Professional. Cold in the way that said she'd already cried this out a long time ago and had nothing left to give. She laid it out plainly. Troy had done this before. Several times. Multiple women. Some married. Some not. My ex wasn't a unique sin, just the most ambitious one. She hadn't just wanted him. She wanted to replace her life. Secure it. Make him the foundation of a new one after destroying the one she shared with me. But there was more. What I didn't know was that my ex had reached out to his wife first. Weeks ago. Desperate. begging for understanding, trying to claim she didn't know he was married, trying to flip the script as always, paint herself as a victim of a man who had misled her. But it didn't work, because his wife had already seen everything. Emails, travel receipts, hotel charges, conversations my ex never thought would leave the private inboxes of a man who didn't even save her name in his phone. Just the letter M. She'd collected it all, quietly, like I had, and now she wanted to share it. Not with me, I had already escaped. She wanted to go public. Not to ruin him, she said, sipping her tea without blinking. To remove the silence. He relies on silence. I understood that more than I wanted to. We made a decision that day, sitting across from each other like reluctant allies in a war we didn't start. She had the files. I had the media contacts. Together, we crafted one final wave, not of destruction but exposure. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't messy. It was surgical. An anonymous leak. A quiet article. No names but just enough details. Enough to scorch the illusion both of them had tried to build. Enough to force Troy out of his shell and back into hiding. Enough to ensure my ex couldn't use his name as leverage ever again. That article made ripples in the circles they both once thrived in. Investment parties, startup galas, real estate networks. People whispered. Opportunities dried up. She tried to reach out once more. A single message. You didn't have to do this. You promised it was over. I didn't reply. Because she was right. It was over. But some things need to be remembered before they can be truly buried. She didn't take the silence well. That final message, you didn't have to do this. You promised it was over. Wasn't just a plea. It was a warning. A desperate last gasp from someone who realized she no longer had control over the story or over me. For years, she had puppeteered narratives, shifted blame, rewritten facts mid-conversation. But this time, the room had stopped clapping. The spotlight was gone. She spiraled. It started quietly, a LinkedIn update here, a subtle post there. All about resilience, reinvention, healing after betrayal. Posts wrapped in self-pity, baiting sympathy from people too distant to know better. She crafted a version of events where she'd been cheated on by both men, me and him, and was now rebuilding from ground zero. The captions were carefully worded to suggest trauma without specifics. But the timing, the tone, anyone paying attention could smell the manipulation. Except this time, no one responded. No comments. No likes. Her audience had thinned. People were tired. She had overplayed every card. And worst of all, she was no longer interesting. Then came the final, desperate move. She filed a formal complaint. Not legal, professional. She contacted one of my company's newest partners, claiming she was owed a stake in the startup. Said she had contributed to its formation, that I had used her unpaid emotional labor to secure my success. She framed it like a domestic business dispute. Not a divorce fallout, but a co-founder conflict. It was absurd. She had no emails, no contracts, no vesting agreements. Nothing. Just her voice and a fantasy. But the timing was strategic. We were days away from closing another funding round. She wanted to rattle the cage. Make investors second-guess their involvement, force a stall, draw out a settlement. Not because she had a case, but because she hoped I'd pay her to disappear. She still didn't understand who she was dealing with. We didn't stall. Instead, my lawyer dropped a portfolio on the partner's desk, time-stamped records, private messages, witness statements, and a copy of the earlier podcast expose. All of it lined up. Neat. Bulletproof. He barely had to speak. The partner read it, closed the folder, and said, "Let's proceed as planned." She lost. Again. And then something unexpected happened. She disappeared digitally. Her accounts went dark. No updates. No comments. Like she'd finally realized the echo chamber was collapsing around her. The silence, once her weapon, now caged her in it. That same week, I got a voicemail. No caller ID. Her voice. But different. Quiet. Detached. I don't know who I am anymore. I thought I was smarter. Stronger. I thought I could land anywhere. But I was wrong. You don't need to respond. I know you won't. Just, I hope you get what you were chasing. I really do. I deleted it. Not out of cruelty. but because it didn't belong anymore. Not in my life. Not in my head. She wanted to be the final chapter. She wanted her voice to linger. But I wasn't reading her story anymore. I was writing my own. The last time I saw her, it wasn't planned. It was 6 months later at a charity event I hadn't even wanted to attend. One of our new board members insisted I show face. Press, photos, handshakes, the usual dance. I arrived late, stuck near the back, sipping a glass of something expensive I didn't recognize. And then I saw her. Across the room. Alone. Not the spotlighted version I'd grown used to, no drama, no grand entrance. She was in a dark blue dress, hair pulled back tight, posture still too perfect for someone trying to fade into the crowd. But this time, she wasn't performing. She looked small. Not physically, she always carried herself like a monument. But something about her was shrunken now. Not in size, in presence. Like the room had moved on without her, and she was still trying to find her line in a script that had already ended. She saw me. I nodded once. That was all. No words. No lingering. Just a quiet acknowledgement that yes, we had shared a life. And yes, that life was over. She didn't approach me. Didn't smile. Didn't try. She just looked away. And in that moment I felt nothing. No hate. No fire. No victory. Just peace. Because that's what she never understood. She thought the end of us would be a battle. A courtroom. A scandal, a war fought in whispers and headlines. She prepared for chaos. She relied on it. But she wasn't ready for stillness. Stillness is the true ending. No revenge. No audience. Just silence. That night I went home alone. No drama. No message from her waiting in the dark. Just the quiet hum of a house that finally felt like mine. The company kept growing. The partnerships held. People stopped asking about her. And I stopped needing to explain. Every now and then, I'd hear a rumor. She'd moved to another city, started some consultancy, dating someone new. I didn't check. I didn't care. That's the real win. Not proving her wrong. Not exposing the lies. Forgetting to care. I kept the folder, the one with the messages, the receipts, the timeline. Not for revenge. Not for proof. Just as a reminder of what I survived. Of what I escaped. And if you're reading this because you're standing where I stood, looking at someone who smiles at you while sharpening the knife, hear me. They don't win. They just make noise. And eventually they run out of things to say. Let them. You don't need to fight the fire. Just walk out of the house and close the door behind you.